All right, well, welcome into this week's episode of Play by Play. It is week number 10, and we're 2.5 months in. And, I'm your host, Andy Horton, along with my co-host and friend, Jared Bergstrom. And so on this week's episode, we're going to talk about Mount Rushmores of the NBA. So we're going to break down team by team, division by division, and who we think the top 4 players for each franchise is. So, Jared, you want to go ahead and get us started?
All right, just diving into it, we're just going to go alphabetical order.
Sure.
Let's start with the Atlanta Hawks. And Atlanta, not really the most well-known outside of probably the top 2 who we each have for players to stand out. I mean, one championship, 1958. But my first one is Dominique Wilkins. I mean, leads in games, minutes played, field goal points, and points per game in the franchise. I'm sure you have him on your list somewhere as well.
Oh, yeah, of course. Dominique is probably number 2 on my list. The guy who takes the top spot for the Hawks on my list is Bob Pettit.
Yeah.
He's a guy who, we've been talking about this for the last few minutes, he does not get nearly enough play when it comes to people talking about the greatest players to ever play this game. Mm-hmm. He averaged like 26 points and 16 rebounds a game on his career. He's like, I'm pretty sure he was the most efficient rebounder in league history. I mean, the guy is just, he was an amazing NBA player. And, you know, when a lot of people, they like to say that guys who played back in the 50s and stuff, they couldn't play today. But, you know, with modern,
you talk about that, I mean...
with modern day weightlifting and everything, all those different things, this guy never dunked.
No.
He never dunked. And he scored 26 points a game.
And that was before the three-point line was invented.
Yeah, well, and even though the three-point line wasn't invented, he had amazing range.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I was watching his highlights yesterday, dude was hitting tons of what would be today threes.
Right.
And, I mean, it was... you guys got to go back and look at his highlights. I mean, the guy was absolutely phenomenal. And so if he played today, he would be a Luka, excuse me, not a Luka, but a Jokic type player. Just absolutely dominant.
2-time NBA MVP in 56 and 59. An 11-time All-Star. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody go to 11 straight All-Star games from 1955 to 1965. 4-time All-Star MVP and All-Star player.
Well, and think about that. 4-time All-Star MVP, you're playing against the best of the best. And I get that back then, you know, the best of the best wasn't what it is today.
Right.
But you win 4 All-Star game MVP. I mean, has that ever happened before?
I don't think so. Not current day. Maybe it's another time in that stretch, but that's one. He's one of the few that have made the NBA 25th anniversary, the 35th, the 50th, and the 75th team.
And you know when they did end up winning their only finals ever, it was they played against the Celtics, and Bob Pettit in the game 6 in which they clinched the series, he had 50 points and 19 of the team's last 21.
Oh my.
So, I mean, the guy was just completely unstoppable. And the fact that we don't talk about him just blows my mind. But then another guy who is on the list, well, maybe on the list. I don't exactly know. I'm a big Joe Johnson fan, and I don't know if he quite makes the cut on this list.
I had him. He's on if there was a fifth one on Mount Rushmore, that's where he had him. I had my last 2 was Lou Hudson. He had over 1,600 career points, averaged 23.5 a game, and almost a double-double with 9.8 rebounds. And then Dikembe Mutombo was my 4th. Yeah, not in his house.
Yeah, there's no argument there about Dikembe.
But yeah, Joe Johnson, I would probably put him as a 5th, and then eventually Trae Young, I think, will be there.
Oh, I would completely
I think
agree.
He could end up locking out. Probably Lou Hudson would be one of the ones he'd knock out because he's not going to replace the other 3, I don't think.
I definitely don't see Dominique. I mean, one of the most dynamic dunkers in the history of the league. I mean, I feel like in the minds of a lot of fans, he could replace Bob Pettit. But like I said, he's just really underappreciated. So, I mean, there's no way that he should ever replace Bob Pettit. I mean, maybe he'll end up being the best player in the history of the franchise. I don't see Bob Pettit ever being able to be pulled down off that list.
All right, now moving on to the Boston Celtics. This is where I think, when you think of Boston, there's so many greats that went through and wore the green and white, and I think everybody's obvious first two choices is Bill Russell and Larry Bird.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then one that I put in there, I put Havlicek. He's first in virtually every stat kept by Basketball Reference.
You know, I'm a big John Havlicek fan. I just don't know if he exactly fits in the list. Just because we got guys like Kevin McHale, who is one of the inventors of the modern post game. Well, there's not really a modern post game, but he's one of the inventors of post basketball. Just all the different moves that he himself made, and his footwork down there on the block is absolutely, it was unmatched. So I'm a big Hondo fan, but I don't know if he beats out a guy like a Kevin McHale, and then maybe a guy like a Paul Pierce, who falls lower on this list than a lot of guys. But he was here. He was a Celtic for most of his career. He was an amazing player, like the entire time he was there. Mm-hmm. He's an efficient scorer. He was an adequate defender, and he's the only. He's the guy who really was able to bring it home for the Celtics in the last 30 years.
And that's where you get into a franchise that's so rich in players like that. It's hard to pinpoint people that you put as the top four because, Bill Russell, an 11-time NBA champion. And then you got John Havlicek, who was there, I think, 7 of the 8 championships he won with there. So, it's hard to take away those two because, right there, that's 11 championships out of your team's 17. And then a fourth one I threw in there was Robert Parrish.
Oh, right. I'm going to need some explanation for that one. I like Robert Parrish, but
I know what you're just going to question me on all my Celtics. He's second most games played. He had 3,450 offensive rebounds. That puts him at first. He's second in total rebounds, only behind Bill Russell. And surprisingly, this stat, he was fourth in steals, which I did not think.
That is a little surprising for a big man. I will never throw any shade at Robert Parrish. He's a great player. But when we're talking about a team with so many guys, it's
right.
I don't know if he makes the cut. And then there's going to be a lot of people who are like, how is Bob Cousy not on these lists? And it's like, it's a tough list.
It
man.
is.
It's a tough list when you have teams like Boston.
You'd look at Boston and LA are going to be the two hardest ones, I think. Mm-hmm. And we'll get to the Lakers in a little bit, but those two are going to be the hardest ones to pick because they've had so many rich players go through the teams.
Yep.
Moving on to the next one, the Charlotte Hornets. That one's probably going to be one of our quickest ones just because it's not that old of a franchise.
Mm-hmm. That one's definitely going to be a little easier. When I was looking at this list with Jeff last night, we were talking about it. I'm not gonna say that I didn't laugh at some of these lists. That some of these guys were on top 15 all-time teams.
You put it down. I've got Dale Curry, Glenn Rice, Larry Johnson, and Kemba Walker. When you think of all-time teams, and you've got somebody who's still playing in the league.
I would probably put Muggsy over Kemba, simply for the fact that. The longevity, he's going to end up having more, even though he was smaller,
Yeah.
And, the fact that he was able to do so much being so tiny.
I think really the only I can't put Kemba there is because he's first in points. But, granted, look along with the Hornets, I think came around in the early 80s. Mm-hmm. So, not much hard to pick through there.
Yeah, there's not a lot of history over there.
And then moving on, here's going to be another one. Granted, I think we're going to have 3 of the same for the Chicago Bulls. Obviously you're going to have Jordan. I got Jordan, Pippen, and Rose.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I was talking to somebody last night, and he initially tried to tell me that Scottie Pippen was not a top 4 Bull of all time, and I was like, bro,
I don't
Who
think
is?
I don't think you can.
If he's not, who is? And then we ended up talking about it, and he came to my side on that one.
So who do you have as your fourth?
So as my fourth, when you look down the list of names that we have in front of us, guys like Bob Love, Jerry Sloan, Joakim Noah, Horace Grant. I really almost want to say Horace Grant.
That's who I have as my fourth.
Because of the things he was able to do. But I also really kind of want to say Jimmy Butler because, Jimmy Butler, the time that he was there in Chicago, I mean, he was excellent.
How long? He wasn't there, but what, 4 or 5 years?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years.
6 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, he kind of had a slow start. The first year of his career, he averaged 2 points, and then only about 9 the next year. But the last 4 years, he really started to take off. And so I would probably end up sticking with Horace Grant.
Okay.
But Jimmy Butler would be an honorable mention, pretty close.
And surprisingly, who wasn't on that list was Dennis Rodman. Was not in the top 15.
It's got to be a thing.
I know he
where
wasn't.
Longevity. In order for him not to be on this list,
he didn't score that much either.
We probably should have said, but scoring. When you rebound like the way that Dennis Rodman did, so you don't need to score. We probably should have pointed out at the beginning that longevity does play a big part into this list and how things are ranked because a guy who's only been there 1 or 2 years. They don't have the same effect on a franchise as a guy like a Larry Bird who played his entire career for the same franchise.
And we can't say Steve Kerr on this list for the Bulls because he was a off the bench player. So I mean, Now moving on, I mean, Cleveland. That's another. So we move into the next one. That's another. They haven't had that many players go through, so I think. I mean, off the bat, you got to say LeBron.
Oh, of course, there's no argument there at all.
LeBron. Then, I mean, this is really in no particular order after LeBron, but Mark Price, Kyrie Irving, and Brad Daughtry. I know Big Z's there, and it was hard not to put him on this list, but Big Z, Big Z was a big, tall, lanky, weird guy.
And he was a great player, but I don't know. Was Larry Nance better than Brad Daughtry? I don't know. I'd have to end up looking at the
Daughtry, and that's another one. Longevity come into that. I think Daughtry ended up playing almost 10 years in Cleveland, if not longer.
Gotcha. So yeah, that would probably make sense that he stays there in that top 4.
So really agreeance. I mean, Mark Price, you had to dig back.
Not much of a
deep
argument.
For stats on that.
But like I said, when I was going through some of these lists last night with Jeff, Tristan Thompson is on their top 15 all time.
That's saying something without. He's had longevity there, or had it there.
Yeah.
But all right, now moving on to the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, no surprise, number 1.
Yeah, there can
Dirk.
be no argument that it's Dirk. So, and then after this, I think that we pretty much probably agree on the top 4 because you also have Jason Kidd marked down. How would you not say Jason Kidd? Steve Nash, of course. I mean, 2-time MVP, and then Jason Terry. So. I think those are pretty easy. 1, 2, 3, 4. But then the question is, at what time does Luka break into the top 4 and take over the 2 spot? Because it'll take a while for him to get to the 1 spot. I think he'll be able to get to the 2 spot quickly.
If he can get and win a championship, I think you can put him to number 2, right behind Dirk.
Yeah, but I don't even think it takes winning a championship, right? Because I mean,
everybody on this list but Nash won a championship.
Yeah, but
then, granted, they were all with Dirk.
But none of these guys have a game like Luka. I mean, Luka,
no.
he plays that. He plays. I mean, it's hard to argue with people
if Luka's been in the league
who call him Luka legend because he can't shoot like Larry Bird, but they play a very similar game. Neither of them super athletic, but they're able to use their body in ways and get in positions and then their ability to score the ball and pass the ball both. I mean, it's just unmatched.
If Luka's played in the league, I think another 2 or 3 years, he's in the top 2 easily for Dallas.
Yeah. Okay. I would definitely agree. It's not going to take long for him to keep moving up this list.
No, and it's like it said. I mean, you go through these franchises. It's not going to be a lot of active players, but Luka is one that's right there on the outside looking in. Mm-hmm. Now moving over, the Denver Nuggets. This one might surprise because I didn't have it wrote down on my list. I was checking off and who might be, but I'm going to change one of them, and you've got to put Jokic in there already.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's no way he's not. Alex English, that's an easy one. Mm-hmm. I mean, anyone that wants to go back and watch his film, you can go back, have fun. Carmelo, still active, barely.
Barely.
Hey,
he's a free agent nowhere right now.
He'll probably get swooped up, come off the bench somewhere next year, score 13 points a game, and keep making a little bit more money.
Then I would keep Dave Thompson, and then I would take off Ralph Simpson and put in Jokic.
You realize that's a typo. Ralph Sampson.
Sampson, okay.
When I saw that last night, I started dying. I was like, Forbes?
But yeah.
How'd you do that?
Yeah, you can't. I mean, 2-time reigning MVP, you get put in there.
Yeah. So then I guess next we're over to Detroit. And it looks like there's probably some disagreement here. So go ahead, I guess.
I've got Isaiah Thomas, Ben Wallace, Grant Hill, and Bill Laimbeer. Who do you have that's different?
I think I'd have to go Isaiah Thomas, Ben Wallace. I'd go Grant Hill. And I would probably go Chauncey. I'm a big Chauncey Billups guy.
Chauncey barely missed the list. It's more Laimbeer was another that's a tenured thing. I mean, granted, yes, Chauncey Billups was a phenomenal player, but I mean, how long was he in Detroit? He wasn't there incredibly long, I don't believe.
Nah, he wasn't there the longest. And Joe Dumars is a guy who I feel like he just barely misses the cut. Just barely by a hair. I mean, the guy was a great defender. He was a part of those bad boys, and he was. I mean, he really beat up on MJ back in the day.
No talk about the bad boys. I mean, if the list was the top 5, I think everybody from the bad boys would be on there. But now here's another one as we go into Golden State. I mean, this is one right off the top. I mean, the first 3 are obviously hands down the easiest ones. Rick Barry, Wilt Chamberlain, Steph Curry. 4th, you could put Clay has the same amount of rings as Curry. Draymond has the same amount of rings as Curry. But I didn't really even write down a 4th just because I think this was more open up for discussion.
So, yeah, I was a huge Chris Mullins fan. I mean, he was a lot of fun to watch. He's another guy that, there's probably some people want to go back and watch his film. Nate Thurmond, another really underrated guy, throughout his career. So I kind of want to say Clay, but I mean, they have some accomplished players. This is another one of those teams where it's a little harder.
That one list that I kind of went by, that I emailed you a copy of that list of rings and all that. Mm-hmm. If you're just going by what the ring count is, then obviously it's a toss-up. I would say Clay over Draymond in a heartbeat.
Oh, no doubt.
But yeah, I would. If we could split it, I mean, Clay and Mullins, I think you could do half one face, half the other. I would say would be respectable.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't argue too much about that then. And we move on to the Rockets, right?
Yeah, I got them written down here.
Okay, so then, I mean, on top of everybody, not even close.
No, not even close. Hakeem.
So Akeem the Dream is, I mean, he's just a guy.
I mean, you could even say what the second one. I mean, him and Moses were no doubters.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I mean, I think the top three are easy no doubters, right?
I would say so.
Yeah. I mean, Yao Ming, who are you going to put over top of the 7.5-foot Chinese guy? I mean,
besides the other two, none that you'd put down first, obviously.
He was so good at, just
defending, blocking,
and getting in the way.
And then the fourth one, I mean, that could be open for discussion. I mean, you see on my list who I have marked down.
You have T-Mac, and I feel like I would agree.
Oh, right.
I think it's close between him and James Harden. I just like T-Mac.
I like T-Mac more
than James Harden,
and then that's
at the end of the day, James Harden has tried to ruin the NBA, and a lot of people might think that's a crazy take, but his whole let me just jump into people, get fouled all the time. I mean, he took what Dwayne Wade started, how he'd pump fake and get guys to get up in the air and then jump into them. He took that to a different level. And so, I mean, there are so many of James Harden's points which were just complete
and that's another thing.
Trash. I mean, there were garbage points. There were points that he should not have had that the refs just gave him because, I mean, I don't know. They just like blowing the whistle or something. I really don't know.
You take James Harden and put him playing back with Bill Russell, Bob Pettit, any of them, they're going to knock him on his butt, and they ain't going to get the foul call. Harden would not compete back then because they just knock him down.
No, not at all. He would have been just laying on the floor a lot.
Well, he already is.
A lot more.
All right, now moving on to. Do we want to go? Is it the Pacers that are next?
Yeah.
Indianapolis Pacers.
So
obviously, first one. I mean,
is Reggie.
8 points in 12 seconds, Reggie Miller.
Yeah. So, and before we get too deep into the Pacers, a little thing on Reggie Miller that I heard a few days ago. Evidently, in 2008, when the Celtics put that team together, did I text you that?
You told me about that, yeah.
Like, okay, well, I'll tell the audience now. Evidently, in 2008, when the Celtics put together Paul Pierce and KG and
Rondo and Allen,
Rondo and Ray Allen, there were talks that Reggie Miller was going to come out of retirement to join that team. And how crazy would that have been? Have the original Splash Brothers? I mean, because at that time, Ray and Reggie were the two best three-point shooters of all time. And then 5, 6 years later, you would have had it in Golden State. That would have. And how many more titles would that have helped Boston win? 1 or 2? I mean, at least maybe Boston wins 3.
I think they could have went back to back at minimum 08, 09.
Yeah, and instead of
because Reggie wouldn't have had to play the whole season. I mean, he could have easily come off the bench 6th, 7th, and I think he retired in 05.
So yeah, something like that.
So I mean, it's not like he's out of shape at that point. That could have.
And he could have when Ray Allen ended up going to Miami and just played 6-man, came in off the bench, shot a couple threes,
shoot corner threes.
He could have played that exact role.
That's the biggest what if. Kind of want to go into 2K and simulate a season with that.
I know. When I heard that, I was like, how the entire league, how that would have changed the entire NBA. But anyways, back to the Pacers.
Another one, I mean, you got the longest tenured Pacer player, Mel Daniels. I mean, that's obvious.
How long was he there? Do you know?
16 seasons, I think.
That's quite a history.
Yeah. And then, I mean, George McGinnis, another tenured player. And then I put Jermaine O'Neal. He was Reggie's running mate for most of his time in Indiana. So, I mean.
Yeah, and
I would, yeah.
I like the pick. I mean, I was a Jermaine O'Neal fan. He had a couple nice seasons in Boston there at the end, and he's a pretty good player.
My first ever NBA game I attended was when Indianapolis and Detroit had that fight. I was in Indianapolis for the first game they played Detroit later on that season. Just so much hatred in Conseco Fieldhouse.
I bet, man. That's
Just
crazy.
I've never heard
that story
a starting lineup just get booed the entire
so
time.
relentlessly.
Yes. Now moving on, I'm gonna go out to LA for a while. You want to go with Clippers or Lakers first?
Let's go with the Clippers. That one will probably be a little easier.
The Clippers, yeah, that was easy. I mean, you got CP,
Bob McAdoo, and then, I mean, Blake Griffin played there for so long. He's there. I think he's in the top 5 in almost every offensive statistic. I guess you could scramble and pick. I mean, it was open. I put DeAndre Jordan. I would go Elton Brand over DeAndre Jordan.
It was a coin flip. I think Jordan had a couple more stats that he beat him out, but I could flip that and be fine with that.
Chris Kaman is on this list as a top 15
Like I said, it's
flipper. Chris Kaman. This is no shade at Chris Kaman.
No, it's just that's more shade towards the Clippers.
He was a good NBA player, but wow.
All right, now this is the second hardest team to come up with. It's the Los Angeles Lakers. We'll just go through names that I didn't put on the list that could have been there. You had Shaq. You had Elgin Baylor. You took my list, so I can't go through
George
it.
Mikan, Michael Cooper, James Worthy, Jim Pollard, Wilt.
I have Wilt.
Gail Goodrich.
Where do I have Wilt? Wilt is on. Where do I have Wilt? Did we go through it all? No, we didn't. Wilt is on. I forget what team I had Wilt on, but it wasn't with the Lakers. Oh, I did him already. But I mean, you go through and tell you. I mean, who's your first?
My first Laker is Magic Johnson.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I didn't have him first, but I mean, he's in there.
Oh, who did you have first? Don't tell me Kobe.
No.
So then, Kareem?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I can't really fight you too much over that. But.
Well, I mean, we're not labeling. I mean, we're not putting them in any order. But I mean, yes, Kobe, Kareem, Magic are my top 3. Who?
Yeah, I can't really argue there. It's hard to not put Jerry West.
I was about to say,
and I don't want to not put him on there, but when
you have to put Jerry West on there. He is the NBA's logo.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not saying I don't want to put him on there, but the guys that we've already talked about, Elgin Baylor, Shaq, George Mikan. I mean, that's.
Until they change the logo, Jerry West is the top 4 Laker of all time.
I'm not arguing that he's not, but I mean, who is a better basketball player, Jerry West or Shaq?
Let's have a free throw contest and see who wins.
As long as it's not, as long as it's not an in-game free throw contest, Shaq will shoot at least 70%.
I would.
That's the crazy thing about NBA players. When I went to the year that the Warriors were trying to break the record for most wins in a season. Me and Jeff and his uncle Ethan, we all went to a Grizzlies game.
Oh, Memphis.
And Chris Anderson hit like 10 threes in a row in warm-ups. So everyone in the NBA can shoot. It's just not necessarily in game.
But I would take West over Shaq, especially I have Shaq on 2 other teams' lists.
Do you? Okay.
Yes.
It's just, like I said, I'm not saying that Jerry doesn't deserve to be there, but man, oh man.
If Shaq wasn't on 2 other teams' lists, which you probably could guess off bat, I would put Shaq in there. But when you're the logo of the NBA for the past, 50 years?
Yeah, at least I'd say, yeah.
I think you might be.
Well, so, I don't want to skip to get our list out of order, but I see that you have him on Miami's list.
Yes.
I just don't know because, I mean, longevity plays a factor. How long was he in Miami?
I think he was in Miami a year less. Or no, I think he was in there the same amount of time as LeBron.
So
I think they both
what,
were
4 years?
4 or 5.
5? Okay. I mean, I don't know, man. That's tough. And how do you not have LeBron on Miami's top? Whoa. What did you do, Jared? Okay. I guess let's not get out of order. And we will go to Memphis, and then we'll go to the Nets. Then we'll get to the Heat, where we are going to have some big disagreements there. Okay.
All right. Memphis, I mean, this one was kind of, I mean, another younger team, not been around that long. I mean, they're still.
Most of these guys have played in our lifetime.
Yeah. All of them. I've seen all of them play. And I think the last two I have are still active, aren't they?
Rudy Gay, I think he's retired now. And
He did finally retire?
Mike Conley is still
Okay, so
active.
yeah, I had Mark Gasol, Zach Randolph, Mike Conley, and Rudy Gay. I almost put Pau Gasol, but he didn't play as long as Mark did.
I mean, I would put Powell there over Rudy Gay, I think.
Okay.
So I'd say Mark
You got the
Powell.
Gasol brothers.
Yep.
Randolph and Conley.
Yep.
All right.
That was
probably one of the easiest.
The Grind City
Yeah.
Memphis team when we were growing up. That was a fun group to watch.
Those
guys could not score at all.
No, they couldn't, and
But
that's why
man,
they were
would beat
one
you
and done in
up.
the playoffs.
They would beat you up, and they were fun to watch a lot of times. Over to the Nets.
Obviously, I mean, hands down, number one player of all time,
Dr.
J. Julius Erving.
Then, Jason Kidd. That one's probably pretty easy. But then after that,
That's where it kind of gets head scratching.
things get.
I mean, I'm not going to put Durant. You can't put Durant. He's only been there
long
2
enough.
years, 3 years.
Yeah. Well, and I'm pretty sure he's missed more games than he's played.
I can see that too.
So, I mean.
So outside of Dr. J and Kidd, I mean, you running down the rest of the list.
Vince Carter.
I could put Vince there.
How long was he there? That's a question. I really didn't.
He was there
look
for
into
3
that,
years.
which was the minimum required.
It
to
was
be
the
on the
minimum,
list.
and he wasn't. Vince wasn't like the biggest scoring threat because the Nets were early on. I think he was drafted by the Nets, wasn't he?
Don't know about that.
But then you got looking at the rest of the list while you look that up. I mean, you've got Bill Melancholy or Melachani, Buck Williams, Brooke Lopez, and the Richard Jefferson, Deron Williams. Those are players who we've seen play in our lifetime.
I was gonna say I thought he was drafted by Toronto.
Toronto.
Yeah.
Okay. But the Nets is one. It's outside of Kidd and Dr. J. It's like they don't really have the star play. I mean, growing up, I think when I really first started watching the NBA, I think Brooke Lopez was the one that you could always remember playing for Brooklyn.
Yeah. Okay. So after looking at this, I had some numbers for a quick second. Vince Carter's definitely there. He was scoring like 25 points a game.
Okay.
When he was in Brooklyn, he was there for 5 or 6 years.
Oh, he was there. Okay.
That's long enough. And then I would probably have to go Brooke Lopez.
Just because he played there for a long time before he bounced around quite a bit the last handful of years, I think.
Well, I mean, he's played a lot of. He's been with Milwaukee for the last 5 years or so.
Okay.
So hasn't bounced around a ton. I think you're thinking of his brother, Robin. Robin's
okay.
bounced around the league. He's been on at least 10, 12 different teams.
All right. So I think that's a solid one for the Nets.
So then we get to Miami, and I do not understand. I really do not understand, so you're going to have to explain. Dwayne Wade, that one's pretty easy. But no LeBron?
No.
How?
Making this list, you just can't. Just because they won 2 championships, no. I don't think he's one of the in the top heat.
How?
I don't have him on the Mount Rushmore, Miami.
How?
Because all he did was win 2 championships. That was when championships.
All he was the best player in the league while he was there.
I don't care.
You don't care? What?
That is when he went to Miami.
They don't
that
win
is
those
when,
titles. They have no shot at winning those titles. Not even close. He carried those teams.
So do you put
after,
Chris
like, the
Bosh
first
in there
year.
too?
I would have to think about that.
Oh my God. No, I do not.
Chris Bosh is very underrated, okay?
When he went to Miami and shaved his dreads, he looked like a velociraptor. No,
He should have shaved his dreads before he left the Raptors. But
I do not have LeBron in there because when this is when the NBA became about going out in free agency and building your big 3 team. You cannot say before that the other teams built theirs. They didn't just go out and sign them in offseason.
all right, well, hang on though. That has nothing to do with the fact that LeBron James on any team, I mean, outside of the Lakers and the Celtics, he goes there, he's automatically top 4, top 5 player in the history of the franchise. There's not enough names on any of these other lists.
Okay, so when in 3 years, when LeBron's son comes into the league and he goes and signs with whoever drafts him because he said he's going to play for him, does that automatically put LeBron as the top 5?
It depends, but likely. No. Depends on how long he's there. Because, I mean, like we say, longevity matters. If LeBron goes, and here's the thing, it's not going to happen. But if LeBron goes and plays with his son for 3 years, I really feel like he's only going to play 1, maybe 2 years max with Bronny, and then he's just going to, finally ride off into the sunset. But
speaking of Bronny,
but you cannot
see Gabe Cupps in Western Ohio beat Bronny's team out in Las Vegas last night by 15.
Oh no.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk about that later, maybe.
But no, I mean, yes, I'm not saying LeBron would be on this list, but if you just, you can't just look at championships.
Jared.
No,
he's
Andy.
the greatest player ever. And if he's not, you can't argue that he's not top 3.
I'm not saying that.
And he goes to Miami for 5 years, goes to the finals every year, wins 2 titles, and he's not the second best player or the third best or the fourth best player in the history of this franchise. You've got to be kidding me. Tim Hardaway did more for this franchise
you can't bet
than LeBron
people
James.
You're trying not to put multiple people on other teams.
No. That is not how this list. That is not what this list says. This is
my paper's over there.
Mount Rushmore for each team, which means top 4 players.
Okay, and I tried to not put other people in multiple spots.
Well, why didn't you put Udonis Haslem in there over top of LeBron? Because you might as well have.
No.
What do you mean?
I'm not putting him there.
The fact that LeBron James is not on your list here is just, it blows my mind.
He was hands down the best one in Cleveland. Let him be Cleveland.
And for the 5 years he was in Miami, he was hands down the best player in Miami. And I'm not kidding when I say that the last 3 years of that team, he completely carried the entire thing. Dwayne Wade was old and broken down. Those knees were gone. And Chris Bosh, the guy, he just turned into a shell of himself. I'm a big Chris Bosh fan, but it was really bad for his career in a lot of ways that he ended up teaming up with LeBron. People would think that, obviously he won titles, so that's a huge win. That matters more than anything. But if Chris Bosh never goes and teams up with D Wade and LeBron, how people look at him is completely different. Because the years after LeBron left, and with the year or 2 that he played before he got that blood clot or whatever in his lung, I feel so bad for the guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was back to like 22, 23 points a game. He was the leader of that team after LeBron left. I just do not understand how LeBron is not on this list. And you have Tim Hardaway above Chris Bosh. There's a lot of people that would call me crazy for having Chris Bosh above Tim Hardaway on the list. But, hey, man, look, the injury's gotten Tim Hardaway's way.
Yeah.
And I am shocked.
I'm not putting multiple players on the other
I understand
teams.
you don't like LeBron. But
No, I'll say I hate LeBron.
yeah, I get it. But, like, really?
But I'm not saying that he's not great and all that. But
Really?
I'm trying not to put players on other teams.
I think that we just have to be legit with these lists and put the best players there. You know? Guys who had the most impact.
So where would you put Jimmy Butler on the list? Because he's been there, what, 4 years now?
4 years, yeah, but I mean, so we got him to a finals. He's definitely above guys like James Jones, Joel Anthony, Mario Chalmers. He would probably... So Shaq has to be higher on this list. I do not understand.
I didn't number him.
Oh no, I get that. I get that. But this list has Shaq at like number 7, which is just insane.
Because they won 2 titles. Him and Wade won 2, didn't they?
Bosh has to be moved up. I think it's only 1. It's
Just 1?
06.
Okay.
Right? But so I feel like Shaq would have to be moved up.
Yeah, that like their
And
points
so
rankings. That
would-
was.
And so I don't know. Jimmy Butler would probably be like the 6th or 7th best player in the history of the Heat. I mean, the fact that he's not on this list at all is just insane.
Right, he's taken them to the playoffs every year he's been there. Conference finals winners, finals appearance. Almost what they took him to
7.
7?
Yeah,
Okay.
they went 7 this year.
So I did.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I don't see how he's not on that list already.
And for a guy who can't shoot, Jimmy Butler can shoot.
He's improved his
threes in the
shooting,
playoffs. Like, I don't know. The guy can't shoot them in the regular season, but if he has to make the shot, he's got a good shot. He's got a really good chance. I mean, he didn't make the one at the end of Game 7, but very well could have.
Right, and that was what we talked about quite a bit too.
Mm-hmm.
Now moving on to Milwaukee. In this list, another one that I'm surprised, Giannis isn't on there. MVP, champion. Didn't he have the scoring title the year he won the MVP?
I'm not sure about that one.
But going off that points that we saw, what was it, Forbes put out this list, I don't see how they don't have Giannis up there higher with points.
Yeah.
He's taken them, he's won a finals, they've only been to 1, I think, right?
With Giannis, yes.
Yeah. They've been to the Eastern Conference Finals twice with him.
Is it only twice?
I think it's only twice. The year they won it, and then...
Yeah, but what about when they lost to Kawhi? Wasn't that in the Eastern Conference Finals?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so he's been there 3 times. I don't see how... I mean, granted, this is a team that is more... They're more old school names that you'll see on the list. Glenn Robinson, Ray Allen, Kareem, Oscar Robinson, Sidney Moncrief were 5 that stood out to me, but give it another year or 2, and I think Giannis is top 2 easily.
Yeah, so Kareem, that one obviously easily. And then Sidney Moncrief. I like your Glenn Robinson pick. I would probably agree with that. And Michael Redd is another one of those guys where it's just, man, injuries.
They're not talking about
injuries just took it away, because he would be a lot higher on the list, I think.
I picked Oscar Robinson. I mean, Big O, home college. He went to Cincinnati. I liked watching him play.
Yeah.
Well, highlights of watching him play.
And you can't really argue with Mr. Triple Double.
No.
You know.
So I think that was a relatively easier one. Like we said, give it time. Giannis will be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for
easily.
sure. I mean, so if we have to be... If we have to, I would probably take Glenn Robinson out and put Giannis in over top of him. Yeah. So.
I can see that. All right, now we got to kind of speed this up a little bit more. Moving on to the Pelicans, it's a young franchise, relatively. I mean, this one, you saw my four: Chris Paul, Anthony Davis, David West, and Drew Holiday.
Big shout out to David West. Go Xavier. That's my boy.
Not a lot of else out there. They haven't really done anything in the playoffs. I don't think they've been to a finals either.
You know, Baron Davis has been on quite a few of these top 15 lists.
That's what he plays there for the minimum.
Baron Davis.
Minimum
exactly.
3 years. It bounces around somewhere else. All right, now
go somewhere, play good enough, get on the list, and bounce.
Moving over to the Timberwolves.
Okay.
Easy three. Garnett, Love, and Zerbiak.
Yep.
The fourth
Great
one,
name. Wally Zerbiak. Love it.
Well, that's why I love watching him when it comes tournament time. The fourth one was kind of hard.
Yeah. There's not a lot there.
I'm fine with just sticking out with three.
I mean, I would probably go down to the bottom of the list. So I would either say Al Jefferson, or I'd go down to the bottom of the list and just Stephon Marbury.
Give it a couple more years, and we'll obviously slide Cat into there.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, actually,
Could you put him in there now?
I think you could.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
Cat is a better player than Al Jefferson.
All right. Now this. Knicks.
The Knicks. Okay.
Hands down, I think we're both in agreement who's number one.
Yep.
Patrick Ewing.
Yep.
And then I put down Walt Frazier.
And Willis Reed.
Reed. And
I would agree there.
then going just off tenure, Carmelo.
Yeah.
I think that's your four.
Oh, actually, no. Bernard King. You can't, when you're talking about the greatest Knicks ever, you cannot leave Bernard King off the list.
Okay. Where was he at? Where did they fall on that list?
He's number 15, which blows my mind.
Really?
It's got to be like a longevity type thing. He must have gotten hurt. Bernard King was
I can see that. All right, now moving. OKC. And the thing that is weird is they included the Sonics in this, and I think the only one on there from the Sonics is Gary Payton.
Well, wait, you mean players actually that played for the Sonics?
They added them. They were both in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Sean Kemp played for the Sonics.
Oh, was he there before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But okay, I think the obvious three are you can easily.
It wasn't. That says Fred Brown. That's Freddie Brown, right? I think, right?
I didn't. I just copied and printed it. So
and
if
Dennis
it is,
Johnson. I mean, those are some older school names.
But I mean, Gary Payton, KD, and Westbrook.
Yeah, definitely.
Who's your fourth? Would you go Kemp?
I think it had to be Sean Kemp.
Yeah.
And Jack Sycamore is like really underrated, but
that's another
Sean
10-year
Kemp.
thing, I think. Yeah.
Sean Kemp.
Kemp played a majority of his career between. I think he came over with OKC when they moved, didn't he?
Okay. Yeah, I think so.
Now moving on to the Magic.
Okay.
This is another one. It's a big man field.
Didn't you just say?
Shut up.
Didn't you just say we're only going to try and have guys on one team?
Shut up.
Because ain't T-Mac
all right, we're going over this
twice.
And what, you don't like T-Mac?
No.
You don't like T-Mac?
We've already been through the fact that I love T-Mac. But, I mean, you wouldn't put LeBron on multiple teams, but you're going to have T-Mac on multiple teams?
Let's just go down to the Trailblazers then, because you're going to get on me about the Suns too.
Oh, yeah, Steve Nash. Uh-huh. But, hey, I actually really do like your son's picks with Steve Nash, Kevin Johnson.
Charles Barkley.
I could probably argue against Amari, but I'm not.
Tenured.
Yeah. Exactly. He was a great player. It was just those freaking injuries, man.
Right. If they didn't stay healthy, I think Phoenix would have had a title. At least one with those two were together.
Probably, yeah.
All right, now moving on. Let's just go straight to Portland then, since we went through Phoenix real quick. Obviously, Clyde Drexler, Bill Walton, two of the older ones on the list.
And see, I was having this argument with my buddy Scott last night and about LaMarcus Aldridge, and he was just like apoplectic at the fact that I think that LaMarcus Aldridge is a Mount Rushmore player. He's a Blazers fan.
It's a tenured thing.
Well, and it's like he was trying to say that Brandon Roy was above him, and it's like, man, I have no hate for Brandon Roy.
Even on this list?
I'm sure he is. I have no hate for Brandon Roy, or is he not?
Brandon Roy is down here 10th.
Yeah. So
LaMarcus Aldridge is 4th.
I have no hate for Brandon Roy. I'm a big Brandon Roy guy, but
I mean, against LaMarcus Aldridge and Dame, I think, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like, Dame was just, LaMarcus Aldridge, like, he had a 3-game playoff stretch where the man scored 40, 45, and 50 points. Now, I don't know if it was quite in that order, but it was like 2012, 2013, first 3 games of the playoffs. Dude scored 140 points, 130 points, some crazy number, and it was like, the guy just needed help. The things, like his efficiency scoring the basketball is just mind-boggling at times.
So how does a Trailblazers fan not put him in the top 4?
Well, so he had like Sheed, which I get. He had, Rasheed Wallace. He had Brandon Roy, Dame, and Clyde. So that was his list. I just can't agree. We take a step down to the Spurs. That one, I mean, number 1 is pretty easy.
Timmy D.
Yeah, and I think
Tim Duncan.
I think Tim Duncan has the highest score on any of this.
I think
any of these lists outside of MJ. Because MJ was number 1. He was like 430, 450, something like that. Tim Duncan is at 405.7.
Yeah, 430 for Jordan.
Yeah. So, and the two highest guys on the list, unless we're missing a Laker or a Celtic, unless I just totally forgot.
Kobe had 400.
Oh,
so yeah, he was the highest 2 on the list.
So, but yeah, an easy Tim Duncan, and then the Admiral has to be there on the list. George Gervin. I mean, those names, just amazing. So then, who are you putting in that last spot? I mean, is it Tony? Is it Manu? Is it Kawhi?
Kawhi. Oh.
I like to say his name differently.
You got to put. I say Tony. I had Tony Parker wrote down.
Yeah, I would agree. As much as I love Manu, I mean, as the Spurs being my second favorite team, like I'm a massive Manu Ginobili fan.
Yeah.
But when you look at just the impacts that they had, Manu was able to make some incredible plays. And
he didn't start all the time. He did come off the bench quite a bit too.
Yeah, a lot.
I think if he started more, I think he could easily be on this list.
Well, and like the only reason why he's not is because we're narrowing it down to 4. If it's 5, he's easily number 5. Then we take a step over to the Kings.
Kings, this is all old. I think Chris Webber is the youngest player on the team. Jerry Lucas, obviously. I mean, this is an interesting fact that I saw the other day on, I think it was Twitter. No active NBA player has played the Kings in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think I saw you share that or something. And
just the insanity I think LeBron's been in the league the longest. I think he's the longest one in the league, and he's been in there 19 years. Mm-hmm. And the Kings haven't made the playoffs, I think, in 22 years. So even if I think Vince Carter played 22 years.
Did something like that.
So, yeah.
He just retired.
Even if Vince Carter was still active, nobody would still play the Kings.
That's pretty impressive to miss the playoffs.
I mean, look at that. You got
long.
Jerry Lucas. Talk about playoff droughts. That could be a whole show in itself. Jerry Lucas, Oscar Robinson, Chris Webber, and I mean, you had to throw in Bob Davies. I think it's just he was tenured.
That's pretty incredible that over half the league makes the playoffs every year. and it's still been
that long 23 or 24 years since the Kings have made it.
Guys who could have made the Kings list, DeMarcus Cousins, not there quite long enough.
Nah,
but he's really the only great Kings player that there's been in our lifetime.
Yeah. Now we got to go over to Toronto. I think this one was kind of an easy one. I think I think the last two are still active that I have checked off.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, Vince Carter, Chris Bosh, DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry.
And Vince Carter just retired within the last year or so. And Bosh, if it was up to him, he'd probably still be playing.
Yeah.
So.
Now moving over to the Jazz. Got Pistol Pete, John Stockton, Karl Malone. It was hard to pick a fourth one off of Utah.
I mean, I'd probably go with Adrian Dantley.
That was, I mean, I had him penciled in, that one.
But this is a team that really I'm a little surprised there's not like the depth of this list is surprising.
I don't think
it has Darren Williams, Andre Kirilenko. I mean, you remember him, right?
Yes.
Like Carlos Boozer, like none of
I remember them, but I think that
Jeff
was more.
Hornacek, like.
I think those ones are the ones that barely made it 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not a very impressive list. My boy Gordon Hayward. Oh,
another
he's the last guy on the list there, so I won't complain too much.
And then finally rounding out the Washington Wizards, Elvin Hayes. Obviously, I think he's number one on their list, isn't he?
Nah, he's number 2. They got Wes Unseld.
Oh, he was another one I wrote down. But I mean, you see my other 2 marked off, and I think that's more because
Gilbert Arenas and John Wall.
Those are more the ones that you kind of know on the list.
See, I feel like I definitely had to put Gus Johnson above.
I mean, I can see that. It's
because John Wall is another one of those guys where it's like, man,
injury.
It's just like he was.
I mean, we're
the fastest player in the league for about 7 years, and then his knees just gave out.
But I mean, do we get the John Wall that does the John Wall dance?
I'm not so sure about the John Wall dance.
You know how to do it.
I definitely don't know how to do it. I may have seen it, but trust me, I do not know how to do it. Maybe I'll have to record that. We'll add that in some bloopers.
But I mean, so rounding out, I think it's pretty solidified with who the Mount Rushmore is of each team. And see, this is where it gets into, I mean, we got a minute and a half left, where if you could go all-time Mount Rushmore, I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Okay, well,
you gotta make it quick, Andy.
There's probably, I could get attacked for this. I don't know. I would probably have to say, to me, the 4 greatest basketball players ever is Larry, Magic, LeBron, and MJ. And that's no shade on Wilt or Kareem or, but it just, the way that those 4 play is, doesn't matter what era they play in, they would be, I mean, all of those guys would probably be more effective in today's game because you can't beat the ever-loving crap out of them. But, just Larry Bird, he had back problems. Imagine if that guy played today and had the money to be able to put, $2 million a year into his body like LeBron does. So, it just, does what's his name does Magic get HIV in today's world? Does MJ, we've seen the pictures. This man was scoring buckets with guys fouling him, hand over his eyes. Imagine MJ actually being able to see while he's shooting, stuff like that. Those guys are just the GOATs right there. So if you got to pick 4 for you, what are you doing?
Larry Bird, MJ. I would go Wilt. I think you have to throw Wilt in there. And this is where it's hard going across different eras of playing. Until, like I said when we were talking about the Lakers, until the logo gets changed, I mean, you can't talk about Jerry West not being some of...
What?
Yes.
Jerry West, top 4 ever?
Until the logo changes.
That'll do it for this week's episode of Play by Play. Thanks guys for tuning in. If you want to follow us on Facebook, go find our Facebook page.
Twitter,
Play by Play.
Instagram, and now on TikTok.
So, thanks for watching this week, guys. We'll see you guys next week.